Hello everyone, I'm here again for another video for streamertactics.com, and again, like the last video, it's to do with the N64, so a bit of a follow-up. So last time I reviewed the EverDrive 64X7, which is here, so you can check that video out. But this actual video is how to stream the original N64 to Twitch. It also covers if you just wanted to record footage but not necessarily stream, because you'll have to do one before the other. So the caveat of the N64 is, in its generation, is probably the one that is a little bit more complicated, or at least I found it a little bit more complicated, but not something that I would actually call complicated as a whole, when compared to the likes of the PS1 and the Sega Saturn that came along with it. Those were pretty much plug and play, because they already outputted RGB, and most upscalers knew what they were doing with them. So, to begin, the first thing you will need, obviously, is an N64. I've got the N64 PAL version, specifically the NUS 001 European, and it's modified. And it's modified because I wanted to record footage, and I wanted to occasionally stream with it if I wanted to. So again, this video isn't about emulation versus original hardware. That discussion is not that interesting to me, to be fair. This is just about, you've got an N64, you want to record it, and you want to stream it. Even though it's PAL, NTSC is technically the same thing, or the same steps. So I might as well just jump right into it. The first thing that you'll need to do is get a mod for an RGB. You don't have to get a mod. The RetroTink 5X, for example, doesn't need RGB. The reason why you should mod it for RGB is to improve the picture quality above all else. It improves it dramatically, but the mod needs soldering, and there's a lot of people, and myself included, who really don't want to bother with all this soldering stuff, because they don't want to break it, they don't want to make a mistake, and they'd rather not the hassle. However, it is actually quite simple to find already modded versions on eBay. I got this with a Tim Worthington RGB mod for only a tenner, or maybe £20 more than an unmodded one from somewhere like CEX. So the cost of getting one pre-modded is not that great if you haven't got an N64 to begin with. If you do already have an N64, you can still stream it, and you can still record it without the RGB mod, but the quality won't be as high, especially if you want to stream with some level of seriousness. If not, skip this whole session and don't get it modded. I'll put a picture up of what a mod looks like on the inside, but it just solders on, and it just changes what the output is in terms of like what the signal that is sent through. Now, to get the very best out of your streams and your recordings, in my opinion, you'll want an upscaler. So that's pretty much the first step. I use an OSSC here, and I've talked about the OSSC quite a few times. I use it for my Saturn, Dreamcast, Mega Drive, Wii, PS2, you name it. I use this. The settings, I've got settings saved on, and it accepts pretty much everything I throw at it. So that is your next step, to get the quality of what the Nintendo 64 sends out for your viewers. So the N64 sends out usually 240p or 288p, depending on where you are, or if you've got an NTSC or a PAL version. And if you were to record in 240p and then expecting people to watch it on their big screen TVs or even a laptop, it's not going to look great. It's going to be rough, because the N64 was designed for CRTs, because that was the technology at the time. And obviously, whilst they were building N64s, they didn't know about HD TVs that were, in the near future, so they didn't bother with it. But the quality is still quite good. So, in my opinion, to stream as best as possible, an upscaler is what you'll need next. So with an upscaler, you can record and stream following this. So, just a brief rundown of exactly why I recommend an upscaler to begin with is it turns the 240p signal, or 288, whatever, I won't keep mentioning the two of them, let's just call it 240p. It upscales it If he upscales it by 2, it becomes 480p, so on and so forth. And what that means is it almost turns the 240p and doubles it, so the picture is twice as good. It's really not that simple, but it's an easy description for people to digest. It makes something that's really small look a bit more acceptable on bigger TVs. And this is quite important when you're recording and you want to stream, because if you were to look at any of the biggest streamers that use N64s, you'll see that and original hardware, you see that the quality of the video you're watching is really good, as good as you remember it on a CRT, in my opinion. CRT is still the best way to do it, but it makes things a lot more complicated when you want to stream it. So you're playing on a CRT, but you're also streaming it. You need some additional stuff. So just to remind the viewers here of what the purpose of this guide is, this is just the way that I do it, the way that I find it to be really easy and really high quality, but it's not the only way to do it. So you got your N64, you got your upscaler. So this is an OSSC. You can also get RetroTink 5X, but that is quite expensive, but that is probably the most plug and play one available. So OSSC has a load of like adjustments you can make to the signal, which some people find brilliant because you can fine-tune on a per game basis, but I actually find it's one of the drawbacks of an OSSC that it isn't just plug and play. Although you can plug it and use the default settings and they are fine, but sometimes they are not fine with particular games. And actually I've encountered it with a couple of N64 games that don't output a 240p. Some of them might be closer to 300p. And sometimes the screen can be a bit stretched and you have to change the settings somewhat to adjust to it. But anyway, you've upscaled your picture now. It's 2, 3, 4, or even 5 times as high as it possibly. 5 is obviously the highest, which technically is the best quality, but that's not strictly true, because the 240p signal is still the 240p signal that the upscaler is using, but it makes it easier on bigger screens. Right. Enough about the OSSC. Capture card is what's next. The one I recommend above all other capture cards is the Elgato HD60S Plus. And I'm going to be quite specific here. It is the HD60S Plus. There is a version with an S that doesn't work quite as well. And the reason why it doesn't quite work so well is the S, for example, may not accept all of the line multiplications that your upscaler is sending it, which means that you may have to downgrade to a 3 or a 2, so you're not using the absolute maximum of your upscaler. The HD60S Plus has never not accepted a signal that I've sent it from this, and I've tested it with Mega Drive, Sega Saturn, which is a really sensitive console in terms of the signal it's sent. The N64 has not nothing the N64 has sent to the upscaler was not captured correctly with this. If you have a look at my EverDrive 64 X7 review, you'll see some footage of some of the games I've played just to show how the EverDrive works. And that's that. But the N64 needs to speak to the upscaler, and cables are really, really important with retro consoles. And I probably do stress that, how much of an impact the type of cable is, and then the quality of that cable. You're a bit limited when it comes to the OSSC because it only accepts RGB signals. And going back to my N64 and why I got that mod, because I've invested in the OSSC, there's no point me really getting another upscaler when I've got one. Because it only accepts RGB, I needed to get that mod. Next, the OSSC only accepts SCART component. So I have gone for a retrogamingcables.co.uk SCART lead. The SCART lead for this generation, and definitely the generation before that, is the ultimate cable you can get for your console. So we want to stream our original N64 to the best possible quality. So getting the best possible quality cable makes a massive difference. yeah, so retro gaming cables is pretty much the only place I've bought my cables if I needed to get any cables that I didn't already have. So that's what you need. So SCART cable into the upscaler, and then the HDMI output into the in-port of your capture card. And then after that, you need an USB-C that plugs into your computer, and then the whole thing just starts operating. So when it comes to streaming any retro console, not just the N64, the console itself is really the least problematic of anything. The most common problem I've occurred when I've looked on forums and stuff like that is capture cards not accepting the signal, or an upscaler not really working that well with it. So the N64 is the least of your worries. It's these two that you need to get. If it's not an OSSC, there are also a plug and play sort of HDMI port at the back. So the N64's output goes into a HDMI converter, and the HDMI then goes into an upscaler, or straight into the telly, to the capture card, whatever it is. But what I want to do, talk about today, is how to stream with the best possible picture. So I'm not going to talk about easier methods in too much detail, apart from saying that there are much easier, there are much cheaper. You can also emulate, but that defeats the purpose of this video. So there you go. That is pretty much what you need. There are, I'm sure, other capture cards out there, but if you were to look online, this is the one that keeps getting the best reviews, mine included, when it comes to retro. HD60S Plus. So it goes up to 1080p and 60 frames per second. Retro consoles don't go over 60 frames per second. Rarely they even go over 30. Most of the time it's 25 to 30. So it'll handle everything. Now for your computer, it's pretty straightforward. OBS or SL OBS, any of those. Even the software that comes with Elgato will capture them absolutely fine. OBS and SL OBS was the most commonly used. If you want to stream N64 and do speed runs, then it will let you do the splits and so on. That is quite straightforward, and that's probably nothing to do with this video. This is just about getting your N64 online. And then you need a monitor to play it, because you may get yourself an OSSC, you may get yourself an HD60S Plus, you may line multiply by 5, which is how I play it, and then your monitor or your TV that you're playing it doesn't play ball. It doesn't work. That's because another tricky thing when it comes to upscalers is not all TVs accept all signals. And some of these are really some odd numbers. So when you're playing modern games, 1080p, 720p, or 1440p are common sort of resolutions. But when you play retro, you can see some odd numbers like 976, 936, 1156, or something like that. I've seen once, because not every game outputs 240p, and when you multiply by 5 you get some odd numbers. So I'm just going to briefly mention a monitor that I saw as a recommendation, because it was the monitor that they were using at Games Done Quick, a particular channel or a community that I'm a really big fan of. I'm a really big fan of speedrunning, big fan of Resident Evil in particular. So I wanted to find out what is it the monitors that they use when they're streaming stuff like Super Mario 64. They always use original hardware, not that often as emulators. And it is a ViewSonic VX3270, and I've got the 2K version, which means that the maximum resolution that monitor has is 1440p, which actually can't be exceeded by 16-bit and 32-bit consoles. So my monitor, just like the Elgato HD60S Plus, will display anything that the OSSC sends to it via the N64. So that's pretty much the introduction. That's pretty much the main content of this video done on this. You need an N64. You need something to convert it to an HDMI. My recommendation is an OSSC, but my wish list is actually the RetroTink 5X. Because it is a bit more plug and play. You need a capture card, and the one I recommend is the HD60S Plus, because it has taken everything that this has thrown at it, technically everything this has thrown at it as well, and a monitor that will accept it all. But generally, even if you sent something to your monitor that it doesn't like, it can still be captured, but it will be an awkward situation. But you don't have to go up to line 5x. If I go from line 4x to line 5x, honestly, I really wouldn't make the difference. You probably see the difference from line 2x to line 5x. From 4 to 5, generally not. And line 4x is generally something that will work with almost all monitors that go up to 1080p, or a TV that goes up to 1080p. So I am going to just wrap this up now by just mentioning 50 Hz and 60 Hz. Usually an issue. It is an issue with PS1. It is, I wouldn't call it an issue. It is an issue with the Sega Saturn. Not an issue with the N64. Regardless if it's PAL or NTSC, it will output based on the region of the game and not the console. So this is a PAL, and if I played PAL N64 games, which I have, then it will output at 50 Hz but a 288p picture. But if I play an NTSC game, which I can through the EverDrive 64, the N64 will then output 60 Hz, so a faster gameplay but slightly lower resolution. So this is quite an important point, even though I've left it to last. If you want a better picture, you can play PAL games, but it'll be slower. And in a lot of cases, it's noticeably slower. But if you want the fastest gameplay, then you play NTSC games, Japanese games, or American games, and they will output at roughly 30 frames per second. I think it's 29 point something frames per second specifically. So with an extra 5 frames per second difference, which might not be felt much in modern games. So if you were playing at 60 and then looking at 65, you may not notice it. But as a percent, it's about 18% slower PAL. But the N64 is output at 60 Hz out the box, depending on the game. So that's easy. So you can either track down NTSC and N64 CAT if you live in the UK. If you live in the United States or an NTSC country, Hertz is probably not something you've ever have to worry about. But as you can probably tell by my accent, I am from the UK. So if you're watching this from the UK and you want to speedrun in particular, don't worry, just put in NTSC games in there or get an EverDrive and just download the NTSC version and you're good to go at 60 Hz. And you can notice it. When I set it up, I'll probably run Resident Evil 2 and you can see the difference when it's not 60 Hz. You can see Leon and Claire really run quite fast. Anyway, so I'm going to recap now before I plug everything together and show you some footage so that you can see if you wanted to follow my recommendation and get these little gubbins here, what is the sort of output that you should expect, or your viewers will expect, or your recordings will expect. So I'll show some actual footage. I'll also plug it in so you can see what I'm looking at my screen as well, because what you're looking at is just as important as what your viewers are looking at. So you don't want to have, if you've got a 60-inch screen, it might look rubbish to you and brilliant for everyone else, so that is quite important. So I'll plug everything in and just show you some footage of some recordings and just take it from there. One more point, because I'm just looking at my N64 now, I completely forgot, is the expansion port. So this is a tricky one here. So N64s out of the box come with a jumper pack, just so that it's not empty. But you can get an expansion slot, which improves the performance. What that does with some games, it also improves the resolution. Some of the issues that can cause is resolution changes mid-game, which the OSSC does not like at all. It literally the screen goes blank and the recording goes blank, but the gameplay is actually still going because there's no frame buffer in an OSSC, so it will have to literally stop the signal, reload the signal again. So that's another reason why I want the RetroTink 5X, because it does have a frame buffer and it handles resolution changes with no lag. The OSSC doesn't. It's a marvelous little device, but it does have its limitations, as do many things. So that's something worth thinking about. So what I've done is I just don't use an expansion port because generally the signal changes from progressive scan to interlaced, which in the CRT world would have been a better picture. But because I use modern screens and I don't want to CRT, to be honest with you, I don't want a big, massive block in my house. I just haven't got the space for it, and neither have I got the money for it, and I can't be bothered getting a splitter to split the CRT signal one way and making sure the capture card gets the other. So that's the other reason. But it's worth remembering. So I use a jumper pack, and so the resolution switches don't happen often, and take it from there. Okay, so that is enough of what you need. N64 upscaler, capture card, the best possible cables, USB-C from the capture card to your PC, software, OBS or something like that to capture it, and a monitor that can accept as high as possible picture for your viewers. So I'll leave this here. I will plug everything together and take it from there. One of my biggest criticisms of anything of streaming retro, possibly unavoidable, is just the sheer amount of cables. So here's everything plugged in. So the SCART is going into the upscaler, and then the upscaler is going into the HD60S Plus, which is then plugged in to my computer, which is a MacBook Pro. So MacBook Pro is a bit trickier to stream with than a Windows computer. So if you're watching this with a Windows computer, well, be rest assured that you will be much happier than me. So the first thing to do is to turn on the N64, then turn on the OSSC or whatever scaler, which will then look for a signal, and you can see there it has a 313p at 50 Hz because it has loaded EverDrive 64 games, and down here is OBS. So I just need to remind it about the capture card. So usually you got to turn that off, then turn that back on again, and then it has appeared on my computer. So this is how a game looks like on the computer, and this is what the Nintendo setup looks like. Coincidentally, my Retro Fighters Brawler 64 controller arrived literally as I was recording, so I went to get it. So I'm quite pleased about that, because I personally hate the original N64 controller. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to place my my camera on a handle so you can watch the quality of the gameplay on a TV. Then this, and then the final video will just be the gameplay footage as seen by a viewer / anyone who's watching your recordings on YouTube or whatever. So I've started here by showing Resident Evil 2, the NTSC version. So it's running at 263p at 61 Hz, and this is what I mean about the quirky sort of resolutions you get with some older consoles. So this is it's not as good looking as the PS1 version, because obviously they had to fit this game on a 64 megabyte cartridge, and I think they actually did it in 63. But you can see here the difference between what I'm seeing, which is obviously stretched on a 2K monitor, versus the end footage on my MacBook there, which you can't obviously see in this video, but I will be recording it, showing you the raw end footage later. But honestly, with my eyes and what you can see in this camera now, it is pretty good. It's really good, actually. Considering I'm playing original hardware, let's face it, because you might see some people who are playing emulated stuff, and it will look better. Right, that's enough of that one. So I am using OSSC options out the box for N64, but sometimes I do manually change them and tinker with them, but not that often, because to be honest with you, it's really not a fun thing to have to do constantly. So another common game, I'll load up Super Mario 64. I'm not going to make this section too long because I think you get the idea. usually when people do graphics tests, they use this screen. So I might just leave it here actually and choose another game. As you can see, I haven't got any save files because I haven't played it. So that's N64, Super Mario 64, and for the last one I'll just load up GoldenEye. And then you can see what that looks like. But again, all of this footage is, you know, original hardware. I am playing a real N64 with what you see now. An EverDrive isn't an emulator, it is the real thing that you're looking at. The real hardware, real timings. Obviously I've got an unofficial controller, but you get the picture. A bit loud that one, sorry. And that's it, absolutely superb. Also gives me a chance to use this Brawler 64 controller, see what that's like, and it's really nice actually, and much better than the original. And it's just as good on the streaming computer actually. There you go. Some explosions for you. And that is as simple as it is. So if you're watching this video and your end goal is to stream original hardware in N64, that is the setup I've literally used. That's what it looks like on my monitor. That's what it looks like on my streaming computer. So I'm trying to be as open as I possibly can to show you from the inside. This is what you're going to be looking at if you had the same or similar setup. Even if you had a retrofitting 5X, it's probably not going to look all that much different to what I'm looking at there, because the resolution didn't change, didn't have any dropouts anyway. So for the last part of this video now, I'm just going to show you the actual footage of those similar games, of what they would look like if you actually streamed them and then uploaded to YouTube or on Twitch. So we've taken you from the beginning of actually acquiring everything to actually the setup of, you know, the practicalities of actually streaming or recording, all the way to the end product, which is video quality on a recording and stream. Because at the end of the day, not many, only streamers have to look at this setup that I've got right here. The user only really cares about what they're seeing. You know, just to touch on it, this is not an absolute, you know, an OBS sort of demo, but you know, if you wanted to add your you know, graphics and chat and all the rest of it, you know, it is dead easy to do it. You know, you can stretch it as much as you absolutely like. And yeah, that's it for this section.
Who's this guy?
If you think you're coming this way...